Hey y'all, what's good? Welcome back. You know who I am. For the last few weeks, we've been talking about Advent, which really just means a period of waiting. And not just waiting for Christmas Day, although I am thoroughly hyped for this, the most wonderful time of the year. We've talked about waiting during really difficult periods of life, waiting on God's plan for your life, remembering that while we're waiting, God is faithful and that He's listening. Waiting kind of sucks, right? To me, waiting sucks like a bucket of ticks. For real, maybe you're just a very patient person, but I tend to quickly lose patience when I'm made to wait. If I can be honest with you guys, and if we can be honest with ourselves, sometimes when we've been waiting and waiting and waiting, we just get tired. Sometimes it feels like everything and everyone is against us. Like we're trying so hard to shoulder something really heavy and nobody's offering to help. A lot of times that can make us feel like giving up. There are plenty of reasons why we might want to. Maybe you've been trying so hard, but nothing seems to change. Maybe you've been trying to make better choices, but the people around you aren't making it easy or aren't very supportive. When we feel alone and unsupported, it's really hard to keep pressing on. There's an important figure in Scripture who experienced firsthand waiting on God. His name is Joseph, and he's a pretty big deal in the Old Testament. Joseph's story begins when he's about 17 years old. Joseph was his dad Jacob's favorite son, and that made his brothers extremely mad. He got loads of special treatment and extra attention. To make things even more awkward, God began speaking to Joseph in his dreams, letting Joseph know that he would one day rule the nation and rule over his brothers. He didn't keep these dreams to himself, and soon tensions were rising. When Joseph's brothers finally had enough of hearing Joseph talk about his awesomeness, they decided to get rid of him. Scripture says, "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these wells and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." At first, they had just planned to kill him, but one of the brothers convinced the rest to spare his life and sell him into slavery instead. I guess that's an improvement from murder, but I'd say it's probably best not to imagine this brother as a hero or anything. They tossed him into a pit in the wilderness, and they told their father that he'd been killed by a wild animal after they sold him. Joseph was then taken as a slave to Egypt. Now let's stop here for a second. Can you imagine what Joseph must have been experiencing when he realized how much his own family hated him? When he waited in that hole to be sold as a slave, when he realized he'd been thrown into a foreign country where he knew no one. While he traveled on the caravan with the slave traders, waiting to find out where he'd end up and how he'd be treated when he arrived. That's enough uncertainty and loneliness to make most people give up hope. But that's not even the end of Joseph's misfortunes. When he was a slave, he actually had a lot of opportunities. He worked for Potiphar, who was a high-ranking Egyptian officer, and Joseph found great success in everything he did. But as soon as it seemed like everything was coming up Milhouse, tragedy struck. Potiphar's wife accused Joseph of getting a little too casual with her, and he was thrown into jail. Now let's stop here again. Can you imagine what Joseph must have been experiencing when he was being preyed upon by powerful people and he had no one to turn to? When he was abandoned by the people he thought were his allies and was going to be thrown into jail unjustly. Once again, I'd say that's enough to make most people give up hope. Joseph went to jail and he continued to live in that prison for years, forgotten by Potiphar and his own family. Joseph even had a chance to be freed, but his opportunity was lost when, once again, Joseph was forgotten. Now, I'm not going to tell you how this story ends today, for two reasons. One, because you can read it for yourself in Genesis. It starts in chapter 37. It's a good read. It's quite a page turner. But also because that's not the point of our conversation today. Today we're talking about what to do when you're sitting in the dark, waiting for help and looking for hope. When Joseph was in this position, he had every reason to give up and lose hope, but he didn't. Even though everything seemed to be going wrong and Joseph wasn't sure if he'd even ever make it out of prison, or if God would ever fulfill that promise of making Joseph the ruler of a nation. Joseph knew God was still with him. While he was waiting, God had a plan. God was faithful. God was listening, and all that time, God never gave up on Joseph. So Joseph never gave up on God. And if you're waiting on God right now, don't give up, because God's not giving up on you either. Platitudes aside, if I were listening, I might be thinking, well, this sounds good, but how? How do I not give up? How do I find hope when things feel hopeless? How do I hang on when I feel like I'm all alone? I would say talk to God and don't stop. I find myself not doing this more than I would like. Like we talked about last week, tell God how you feel and what you're experiencing. Then ask for help to hold on. You could talk to other people. Joseph may have been abandoned and alone, but you're probably not. In my experience, one of the best things I can do when I'm in trouble or feeling stuck is talking to someone. It might be talking to one of your folks or maybe an older sibling. It could be talking to your youth leader. Whoever that is for you, seeking wise counsel is a powerful thing. Remember that God is stronger than you think. When Joseph was in that hole, he never could have guessed the opportunities God would give him in Egypt. When he was in prison, he had no idea what God had in store for his future. When he was betrayed by his brothers, he couldn't have anticipated the way God would one day restore their relationship. God did all of those things and more. And that's the same God who's telling you right now not to give up. God is stronger than you think. Remember that you're stronger than you think. You're made in the image of God. You were created by the Creator who designed you on purpose. You're strong, you're capable, and you're resilient. And when your strength fails, and it often will, remember that God is far stronger than you need Him to be. Choose hope. Hope isn't merely something that happens to us. In many ways, it's something we do choose. We choose hope when we fill our minds with what's good and true. We choose hope when we choose to reach out and talk about our struggles rather than trying to handle them alone. We choose hope when we tell God how much we need help. We choose hope when we decide not to give up, no matter what. When the going gets tough, I hope you can remember these words from Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. It says, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." God calls us to stay the course. And while we're waiting, I hope you can remember not to give up. Merry Christmas.